Uh-oh. It's 2 p.m. I've been caught. During my daily runs. Uh-oh. Send help. Help. Okay, I gotta check the shop, actually. There's a shop that sells chickens. Like, I found a shop that sold like 300 raw chicken or something, but now I can't remember where the fuck I found it. Alright, it wasn't this one. Because I could use that for summoning. But I don't know where it went. What the hell is that leprechaun doing? But yes, I have been caught. Oh, cool. I updated StreamerBot, and now the things are going live automatically again. Cool. Now let me just push my pinned message. Yes, pin it. Alright, cool. Now, last but not least, I need to... Where is it? Magic pot. I think I have a 1 dose left. Yes, magic pot. Drink that. Drop it. Oh wait, not last but not least. Still got to go to Karamja to buy my daily food. Alrighty. So, what are we going to do today? Well, today, I am being a good Gim teammate. I am going to be doing Dragon Slayer. Because Ben got King Black Dragon as his task. And we want to go slay it. So he can get that done for his boss task. I don't know why, what laws. I have so many laws. I don't need natures or laws. I'm buying most of the other stuff just because I don't know what I still need in this for whatchamacallit, ancient magics. I don't know what runes are required, because runes seem different in this game for a lot of different things. So I have no idea, but we will find out. That being said, I am 1 quest point, because I swear to God, they have increased the quest point requirement for Dragon Slayer by 1 point. I thought it was 32. I'm pretty sure it was 32. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was 32 in old school. And back in the day. And now they've upped it to 33. So, rather than risk getting stuck on a bowl of onions for an hour, I'm just going to do one that is extremely simple, extremely basic, and just get a quest point, which would be Vampire Slayer. I can't think of how I'll mess that up. I'm sure I'll find a way, but I can't think of it off the top of my head at the very least. So, that's good. Actually, we won't come back for the rest of the channel. Let's just go straight to Draenor. I mean, I don't really think I have to do much for it. I think you can just go straight in there and kill him. From memory, like if you grab the garlic if you want. I did see them do part of this quest. I watched Gillinor Games last night, and there was a speedrunning challenge. So that involved Vampire Slayer. Spoiler alert. But I don't think anyone's going to be in chat right now. And they just started the stream, and the video won't come out for another week, so it's okay with the spoilers, I think. Plus, half of my chat don't even play RuneScape. That main hand and offhand, why would that? Oh, no, not. Actually, no. There's probably plenty of reasons to not do that. I wish I could just like select offhand or main hand. I wish I didn't have to. Like, it wasn't just set like auto cast and that's it. Huh. Morgan, what are you doing? Praise Sardamin. He has brought you here to save us all. What? He has guided your steps to my door so that I may beseech you to save my village from a terrible threat. Yeah, why don't you save your own village, you lazy fuck? I couldn't. The fear grips me like a hand. I tremble at the idea of leaving my house. What is this terrible threat? Our village is plagued by a vampire. Fuck, don't go to Mauritania, buddy. There's hundreds, thousands. Our village is plagued by a vampire. He visits us frequently and demands blood payments, or he will terrorize us all. The vampire showed up all of a sudden and started attacking a village. I don't know, I just moved here with my wife. We'd move on again, but we're down on our luck and can't afford to. Besides, I don't want to abandon other innocents to this fate. This could be a good community, if only that vampire would leave us. Will you help me, brave adventurer? I sure will, Morgan, because I want your quest point. Wonderful, you will succeed. I'm sure of it. You are very brave to take this on, but I think you should speak to my friend Harlow before you do anything else. Who is Harlow? He is a retired vampire slayer. I met him when I was young, when I was a missionary long ago. He will be able to advise you on the best methods to vanquish this vampire. You already know a vampire slayer, what do you need me for? Harlow is past his prime. He's seen too many evil things in his life to forget them. He drinks himself into oblivion. I fear he will slay vampires no more. Oh yeah, this guy's in Varrock. He spends his time at the Blue Moon Inn located in Varrock. If you enter Varrock from the south, it is the second building on your right. Yes. But, before we do that, we're going upstairs and we are getting some garlic. Is it not this house? The next house. Let me in. Might be Ned's house. Is this Ned's house? I think it's Ned's house. Yeah. Huh? Did they fuck with the quest? There's usually a cupboard in one of these. Oh, you've got to be trolling. It's locked. Oh, they're going to make me go all the way there and all the way back, aren't they? Oh, RuneScape 3, why do you do this? I don't think this is a good idea. Said in a previous quest, if people want to cheese things for themselves and spoil it for themselves, you should let them. You shouldn't force people to do the thing the way that they don't want to do it. Okay, there's the bulb of garlic. Okay, they've just changed the layout of the house. All good. I don't know why I went and did that. I think I have like 100 of them in my bank. I just realized that. Shut up. Leave me alone. Alright, holler, hurry up. I also forgot to restart my computer, so I'm a little laggy. My computer has been awake for too long. Talk to the bartender, get a beer. A glass of your finest ale, please. No problemo. Alright, now talk to Harlow. Depends on who's asking. I can teach you. I was the best vampire slayer ever. Buy me a beer and I'll teach you. Alright, is living in fear of a vampire and all you can think about is beer? I should drink anyway. Alright, have a drink. Okay, here you go. Tell me, how to kill vampires then? Yes, vampires. I was very good at killing them once. Vampire slaying is not to be undertaken lightly. You must go in prepared or you will die. A stake is an essential tool for a vampire slayer. The stake must be used in a final blow against the vampire or his dark magic will regenerate him to full health. I always carry a spare so you can have one. Thank you. You need a special hammer as well to drive it in properly. I think I have a spare hammer you can have. Okay, that's handy. One last thing. It's wise to carry garlic with you. Vampires are slightly weakened if they can smell garlic. Garlic is pretty common. I know I always advise Morgan to keep a supply. So you might be able to get some from him. If not, I know they sell it in Port Sarim. Okay, so those are the actual supplies I need, but how do I actually kill him? You are an eager one. Killing a vampire is dangerous. Never forget that. Go in prepared with food and armor, but understand that you may die. It's a risk we all take in this business. I've seen many fine men and women die at the hands of vampires. Enter the vampire's lair, attempt to open the coffin. He should be asleep in there, so try to use the stake on him. As you're new to this, you'll probably just wake him up and the real fight begins. Fight him until he's nearly dead, then when the moment is right, stake him through the heart and hammer it in. It's gruesome, but it's the only way. Once he's dead, speak to Morgan so he can notify the village. Yeah, easy. Who the fuck is Thomas? A retired adventurer. Is it Morgan then? I'm just thinking that wasn't there a doctor or something in here, or a surgeon? Or was that this guy used to have like a doctor's surgeon model looking thing? I don't know. Now, what you used to be able to do is go through the back door. But I don't know if that's still a thing in this. We shall find out. They have screwed with me at many other steps, so I'm sure they're going to screw with me now. Otherwise, you got to go through the front door and shit. Progress. Let's go. Better die, motherfucker. Also, for those that haven't seen the VOD and those on stream right now, I actually got 43 prayer last night. So the shit is going to be even easier. I could attack while in this. Boom! Oh! Good fight, I guess. Also, that's different. In the original game, the original game and in OSRS, you complete the quest as soon as you play the vampire, like the quest pop-up thing happens. But this probably makes more sense to go and notify people. Especially the ones who ask you to do it. But, that was an epic fight. What can I say? Nah, I'm not actually criticizing. It's a beginner quest. Morgan, you're never in your house, are you? For someone who says he never leaves his house because he's scared, you're never in it. Praise Saradomin, bless you. We are all saved. The vampire is slain. Combat XP lamp. Wait, does that mean I can choose what it goes into? Oh, fuck yes. I need, because normally that gives attack XP. Cool, but I can choose in this. I want 70 defense so I can get some Barrow's gear. All right, cool. Go to the quest log. 35. Dragon Slayer time, baby. Go Dragon Slayer time, wherever it is. No, not count as ground. That is active. Okay. Talk to the guild master inside. Okay, cool. Alright, let's go this way. Does this game have a chronicle? That's the wine cellar, there's Django. Does it have a chronicle teleport? Miscellaneous. The rock, the pool. Yeah, I may have bought that already. Ring of cabbage. Well, that's very important, so we need that. Cabbage Slayer, we want that as well. I've actually been rewatching Avatar: The Last Airbender, so that's very appropriate right now. My cabbages! Alright, I guess they don't have a Chronicle Teleport. Oh, there's no point in the Chronicle Teleport. The Lodestone is right next to it. What am I on about? Put that away, put that away. Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, we will probably do this whole quest anyway, because it's been a minute since I've done a quest in one of these VODs. So, might as well. Oh no, you don't need to do the full thing to get the shield, but we might as well. And I'm also curious about this store. Ben said there was a whole bunch of stuff that isn't normally in there in old school. Can I access the store right away? What do we got? Rune gear. Whoa, rune everything. Rune gear and long sword. Right, I feel lied to. Unless it's... Oh, there's different types. Okay, so there's a range mage and... Okay, cool. I already have that stuff. You know. Thank God I didn't try too hard to get all the gear. 5 rune arrows. Huge. 5 rune bolts. Huge. Oh, that's cool. They have 2-handed crossbows in this. An offhand throwing axe. Okay, I kind of like the sound of that. They're probably terrible. But, oh yeah, magic short bow. Very nice. Magic shield bow. Okay. Yeah, I like it. It makes more sense than just having the rune and green d'hide. Greetings! I have a quest. Aha! Yes, a mighty and perilous quest, fit only for the most powerful champions. And at the end of it, you will earn the right to wear the legendary rune plate body. Ooh. So what is this quest? You'll have to speak to Oziak, the maker of rune armor. He sets the quest that champions must complete in order to wear it. Oziak lives in a hut by the cliffs to the west of Edgeville. It can be a little odd sometimes, though. What's that? The rune armor thing that he says. It reminds me of that. Oh, it's like a Kiwi, like New Zealand, like skits show channel. I think it's Viva or something. But they have one about people getting different armor and stuff for reward, and it reminds me of that. All right, good day to you. Aye, 'tis a fair day, my friend. I'm not your friend. Jesus. Yes, it's a very nice day. I made the gods walk by your side, now leave me alone. Alright, I'm not your friend. Fuck you, buddy. Good day to you. I'm not your friend. I'm surprised if you're anyone's friend with those kind of manners. Yeah, I could say the same to you, dick. You saw me a rune plate body. How does he know I have some? Because I can see it on the stand right there. Let's see if I examine it. Does it even say rune? No. Oh well. Shut up. I'm a master detective. The guildmaster of the Champions Guild told me. Yes, I suppose he would, wouldn't he? He always sending me you fancy pants heroes up to bother me, telling me I'll give them a quest or something like that. Well, I'm not going to let just anyone wear my rune plate mail. It's only for heroes. Well, we're doing a Champions Guild, not the Heroes Guild. So someone's overcompensating. So leave me alone. I thought you were going to give me a quest. Alright, I'll give you a quest. I'll let you wear my rune plate mount if you slay the Dragon of Crandor. The dragon, that sounds like fun. Ah, yes, you're a typical reckless adventurer, aren't you? Now go kill the dragon and get out of my face. But how can I defeat the dragon? Go talk to the guildmaster in the Champions Guild. He'll help you out if you're keen on doing the quest. I'm not going to be hand-holding any adventurers. Dick. guy has the nerve to say, oh, I don't have manners. I suppose it would be pretty annoying having someone turn up constantly. It's like having Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on your door constantly, but they're actually adventurers asking you for a quest. That would be really fucking annoying, actually. Alright, open. Greetings. I talked to Oziak. He gave me a quest. What did he tell you to do? Defeat the Dragon of Crandor. Yes, the Dragon of Crandor. Goodness, he hasn't given you an easy job, has he? What's so special about this dragon? 30 years ago, Crandor was a thriving community with a great tradition of mages and adventurers. Many Crandorians even earned the right to be part of the Champions Guild. One of their adventurers went too far, however. He descended into the volcano into the center of Crandor and woke the dragon Elvarg. He must have fought valiantly against the dragon because they say that to this day she has a scar down her side. But the dragon still won the fight. She emerged and laid waste to the whole of Crandor with her fire breath. Some refugees managed to escape in the fishing boats. They landed on the coast north of Remington and set up camp, but the dragon followed them and burned the camp to the ground. Damn. Game of Thrones. Out of all the people of Crandor, there were only 3 survivors, a trio of wizards who used magic to escape. Thalzar, Lozar, and Melzar. Oh, we're gonna go to Melzar's maze. I forgot about that. If you're serious about taking on Elvarg, first you'll need to get to Crandor. The island is surrounded by dangerous reefs, so you'll need a ship capable of getting through them, and a map to show you the way. When you reach Crandor, you'll also need some kind of protection against the dragon's breath. Okay, you know what? I know some of this, but for the video and the stream, how can I find the route to Crandor? Only one map exists that shows the route through the maze, through the reefs of Crandor. That map was split into 3 pieces by Melzar, Thalzar, and Lozar, the wizards who escaped from the dragon. Each of them took 1 piece. Melzar's map piece is probably Melzar's maze. Melzar built a castle on the side of the Crandorian refugee camp, north of Remington. He's locked himself in there and no one's seen him for years. The inside of the castle is like a maze and is populated by undead monsters. Maybe if you could get all the way through the maze, you could find his piece. I'm actually curious about this because the castle itself has changed, and Melzar's maze in Old School is one of the most dated pieces of content. Adventurers sometimes go in there to prove themselves, so I can give you this key to the Melzar's maze. Okay, thank you. Alright. Lozar's map piece. A few weeks ago, I'd have told you to speak to Lozar herself in her house across the river from Lumbridge. Unfortunately, goblin raiders killed her and stole everything. One of the goblins from the goblin village probably has its piece now, okay? And Thalzar? Thalzar was the most paranoid of the 3 wizards. He hid his map piece and took the secret of its location to his grave. I don't think he'd be able to find out where it is by ordinary means. You'll need to talk to the Oracle on on Ice Mountain, okay? And how can I protect myself from the dragon's breath? That part shouldn't be too difficult, actually. I believe Duke of Lumbridge has a special shield in his armory that is enchanted against the dragon breath. Alright, where can I find the right ship? Even if you find the right route, only a ship made of the old Crandorian design will be able to navigate through the reefs to the island. If there is still one existent, it's probably in Port Sarim. Then, of course, you'll need to find a captain willing to sail to Crandor, and I'm not sure where you'd find one of them. I've forgotten his name, but I'm sure I'll know it when I run into him. Alright. First things first, let's just go to Lumbridge. Get the thingy. The anti-dragon fire shield. I'm also almost 97 woodcutting on Old School. Let's fucking go. I think I'll get it by the end of the stream. Alright, Duke. Duke Horatio. Greetings, welcome to my castle. Shut up and give me a shield. I seek a shield that will protect me from fire. A knight going on a dragon quest. What dragon do you intend to slay? Elvarg. Are you sure? Yes. Well, you're a braver man than I. Why is everyone so scared of this dragon? Back in my father's day, Crandor was an important city-state. Politically, it was as important as Falador or Varrock, and its ships traded with every port. Wow, way to downplay your own town, mate. But one day when I was little, all contact was lost, and the trading ships and the diplomatic envoys just stopped coming. I remember my father being very scared. He posted lookouts on the roof to warn if dragons were approaching. All the city rulers were worried that Elvarg would devastate the whole continent. Are you gonna give me the shield or not? If you really think you're up to it, then perhaps you are the one who can kill this dragon. Alright, thank you. If you kill it, for Saradomin's sake, make sure it's really dead. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Let's just equip this, because why not? Alright. Next, let's get the map pieces. Alright, let's do that. I'm surprised Remington doesn't have a teleport. Actually, fuck it, we'll go to Port's room because it's right there, and we can go to Melzar's maze right afterwards. Actually, I'll just go straight to Melzar's maze because I might just be able to talk to whoever it is. Is his name also Morgan, actually? I think he's in the thing, the pub. Good place to be, not gonna lie. I could do with a pub day. Been a minute. Alright, so I think there's the craft. Alright, here, they've changed it. This used to be just a building, not a tower. So I'm curious to see what's inside and how it differs. Surely there's still a lesser demon and a skeleton and stuff in here. Whoa! Alright, props JagX3 team. This is way cooler. Way cooler. Alright, zombie rats. Don't care. Fuck. Go down, ladders. Oh, okay, it's mostly probably just a maze, like actually just a maze, not a... Fuck. I think I gotta kill one of these for a key. If it's the same as the old one. Alright, so it's a red key, red door. Oh wait, there's a few red doors. Fuck. What's up? What's this way? Uh-oh. 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 Alright, so that just goes to the... Wait, what does this one go to? That is also a dead end. Do I just go down here? Is that all it is? I feel like I might have to kill the ghosts, actually. For another key? Been a minute since I've done this. The door is secure. Oh, it used up the key. Okay. Go down. The door is securely locked. Alright, well, we'll kill the zombie first. Oh, we'll kill the rat first, just in case. The door is securely locked. Love it. Right. Amazing. Appreciate it. Is that... Okay, that is a red ladder by the looks of it. So we'll go up this one. And I think I just saw a green... Fuck, I'm outside. God damn it. It's okay, I've got the shield. So if this takes me the entire day, I've still got the shield for killing dragons later. Alright, so I'm gonna do this. Can I grab 2 keys? Stock up. Fuck. Alright, it's gonna go through here. Oh wait, no. So there is rats in here. That means I'll get rid of the key, I'll get a new key. Is it just a little rat? Maybe I won't. But this goes up to the ghost. The ghost will give me a different key, right? Yeah. Or not. Give me a key, you little shits. Open the wardrobe. It's full of scorched and broken objects. Don't see anything of value. Alright, kill that on the way. Note to self, must stop thinking about cabbages. Alright, that feels personal. As the flesh is all gone, it's more difficult. Animate from the rats, okay. I'm guessing I go through one of these and then I'm stuck with my choice. So that's a broken ladder. It seems like the door that you're most likely to miss. Oh no, it's a broken ladder. Okay. Let's just fuck it. Just send it. Oh my god. Give me a key, please. Maybe I go through here. Climb down the ladder. Oh, you son of a... Alright, come. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying. No, I actually do like this type of stuff. This stuff's cool. Backtracking's a little annoying, but it's like the rest of it's cool. Alright. Next attempt, we're going in here. Right, open exit door. Open red door. Exit. Alright, red door, red door. Open door. Need a key. Well, that is a broken ladder, so I'm guessing this just means it comes back into this room. We're gonna have a look in the wardrobe. Heaps of dead rats, lovely. Heaps of dead rats, lovely. Okay. Search wardrobe. Oh yeah, let's search all the wardrobes. I don't think there'll be anything in these. Other than dead rats. I'm pretty sure this one just was the one that led to there, right? Oh my god, I've already forgotten. Can I get a second key or not? I can get a second key. Oh, okay. Let's go back through here. We have two options here. Now, these are regular doors. Orange doors. Any of these ghosts look different? Not really. Oh, that one. That one has a thing let's talk to. And that one has a thingy on its head. We love a thingy on the head. But we are going to go down and we're going to have a look in here just one more time. Hopefully it's not a broken ladder to go back up. Okay, it's not. Exit door. Alright, so we need a blue door key. And that one doesn't have a collar. That one doesn't have a collar. Find it interesting it says exit door though. Alright, let's go back out. And a green door. Okay, blue doors and green. Oh, and magenta. Oh, what the? Alright, I want to check out that ghost. There's something on its head. So I guess I just must not have slayed that one. Alright, we're coming here. Where are you, Buckethead? You're... Well, there goes that plan. Kill all of them. Oh. Why is it not just a guaranteed fucking thing? Okay, I don't have any information yet, so I don't know which one would be the correct one. So it's really just it's not that one because it's broken. But other than that, I guess that means we come down from here. Other than that, it's just a 1 in 3 gamble, right? Oh, this actually, no, this is a 2 for 1. I got 2. Cool. Alright, and those Skelly Boys. Is there a ladder? Okay, so this one has the ladder up to the Skelly Boys. This has a ladder up to the Skelly Boys, but we need a yellow key to get into the Skelly Boys. Interesting. Yo, what the fuck? Oh, I'm an idiot. I just went down the only one that I can't get back up. Yeah, I can't get up. Alright. So these two are basically connected. This is fine. Oh. Okay. Whoops. I wasn't paying attention enough, I guess. Anyone got a key for me? Key? Fellas? Lads? Gents? Yeah, there we go. Yellow key. Now, it's not that one, because that's where it came from, right? This looks... Is that just a dead end? Or is there a ladder in there? Okay, that looks like a dead end. So, does it have to be this one? Oh, no, there was a ladder. Where's this go? Fuck. That's broken. This looks broken. Oh! Did we make progress? Where do we end up? Hey, give me a blue key. Give me a blue key. Yeah. Progress. Oh, Melvin the Mad. Zombie, get back into your room.
Back in your room. Wait. You're not a zombie. Let me drink my tea in peace. Let me drink my tea in peace.
Oh, I can't even see that.
Leave me alone. I need to feed my pet rock.
Okay, he dropped the magenta key, I'm guessing. Now, I don't remember if I actually have to fight this or if it's in a crate or something. But we ain't no bitch. Oh, it's all 56 anyway. Oh, it does drop it. Okay. Clearly, your cursed ashes gift. 13. Okay. Alright, we're gonna go in here. Hopefully this has the... This should have a piece, right? Map piece. Perfect. Okay, next up, we're going to Ice Mountain. So, follow it all. I don't think... No, this isn't the Below Ice Wolf Mountain. Oh, quest. I don't think this is the Kill the Ice Queen. Now, this area has changed a little bit. So I wonder if the path up is still the same. take a looky-loo. Alright, yeah, it seems fine. Oh, is that different? Camdoza entrance up the top. Isn't Camdoza the place on the side? I don't know. I don't know. Oh my god, Ben ran into a cosmetic for the dwarf cannon. It was like some laser beam thing. It was wild. He ended up streaming it for us just to show us. It was weird. Alright, Oracle. What do you got for me? I seek a piece of the map for the island of Crandor. The map's behind a door below, but entering is rather tough. This is what you need to know. You must use the following stuff. A drink used by a mage, that's a wizard's mind bomb. Next, some worm string changed to sheet. Then a small crustacean cage, yeah, lobster pot. Last, a bowl that has not seen heat. Okay, so an unfired bowl. Next, some worm string changed to sheet. Oh, silk. Silkworm. Okay, please tell me it actually kept that listed in here. Yes, cool. Alright, Wizard Mind Bomb, that's just in Valley. Oh, whoops. What am I doing? I can... teleport. Oh, I've got teleport too. I think I have silk in the bank, but I can also just steal some from the silk stall very quickly. What ales are you selling? And I'll try Mind Bomb. Thanks. But I think I've got one, but I don't know how to get them off tool belts, so I'm cooked in that regard. Search. No. What? Page? No, I need to buy one. Oh, silk. Let's see if I got silk. I have silk. Cool. Let's go to Port Sarim for a fishing shop. Actually, Catherby, because I know Catherby has a fishing shop and it has lobster fishing spots. And then I forgot what the last one was. Let me check so I can look while running. An unfired bowl, so I need soft clay. Alright, lobster pot. If it needs to be the new crayfish pot thing, I'm gonna be so sad. Soft clay, soft clay, soft clay. I think I just need to make some. Alright, so we go to Varrock and then we run up to Barbarian Village, where there is a pottery wheel, I believe. I need water. Bucket. Where's a well? Well. Still. Varrock. We go to the Varrock Southwest Mine. There is some clay there. Then we go to Barbarian Village. Crap. I was meant to lodestone. I think there's a pottery wheel there at least. I know there's the kiln there. Pottery wheel, yeah. Ugh. Maybe down the bottom section. Copper. Don't tell me they fucking changed this. Oh, you sons of. Sorry. Where the fuck do I get clay then? Silver, blah, blah, blah. Oh, please tell me they've moved it to here. Oh. Where do I get clay? Yeah, it's only limestone still. Crafting guild mine, but is that outside? Why is it outside and it's still... Where else would clay be? I don't remember. Because you don't have to remember, because you know where it normally is. But then they like to fuck with it. It's the coal mine. Oh, this is so fucking troll. Why would they feel the need to move it? Okay, okay, that's not too bad. That actually still makes sense. It's near the whatchamacallit. The barbarian village. Alright. My complaining will quench a little bit. Well, sorry, not quench. What are you doing? Play. Alright, so we do this, then we go to the pottery wheel. Here. Wheel. Critical swing. Do that on the way. Oh. Unfired bowl. Cool. Was that everything? Oh, we can just drop the bucket. I think that was everything, right? Crustacean cage, bowl, yes. Silk, yes. And yes. Okay, cool. Let's just go back up there. Easy. And I said I had to go below. Is that in that little dungeon thing? That's behind a door below. I actually don't remember how this works in old school. What the hell? Oh, it's activation sites. Where's the door below? Unless the door below is part of the riddle. Use a tool. What the fuck is this? Oh, no, is it this hatch? Please be the hatch. Oh, door below. No, I think I know where it is. I think it's the door in the Dwarven Mine right as you go in this entrance here. It's like a magical door thing. I know it's used in a quest, but I don't remember which one, so it makes sense if it's used in this one. Yeah, over there. Yeah, this makes sense. Yep, there's this chest. Cool. Love of God, don't drink it. Better not be in a fucking correct order or whatever. Thank you. This really is a weird place. Don't care. Cool. Now, what did I say the last piece was? The Goblin Village. Alright. I guess we just run there. Oh my god, load time would have been quicker with how long that took. Heavily Telly would have probably been quicker too. remember that being a lower level. I don't remember what's down there. Okay, Goblin Village. From memory, you just have to search a crate, which is easy enough. Might as well replenish my prayer now that I have 43, because I'm just amazing like that. I did a recap video on what I actually did for the prayer, but for those in the live stream, it was, oh. And, oh no, they're fighting each other. No, there's just a crate somewhere. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Is it down here? No, I don't think it is. Was it up top? Oh, crate. Not what I was looking for. What's up here? What the fuck? Oh, there's blue dragons right there. What the hell? Oh, great. I think this is it. I hate this game. I don't want to talk to them. That involves dialogue. Maybe we just murder them. So I'm gonna check up the. I can't remember if that's for the Goblin Quest or this one. How do I get in there? Ladder. Search. That's Goblin armor. I don't want to do the Goblin Quest right now. Oh, can't even get in there. You two having a meeting? You in love? Are you trying to just like so stupid you can't get to each other? Got it. No, none of those are searchable anyway. Oh my god, we have to talk to them. The worst possible outcome. Socializing. Talk to you. You're a random goblin. Green armor is best. Red armor, I don't care. You. Hi there. Hi, it's up. Thing makes back hurt. That is a dilemma. Stolen by a goblin from the Goblin Village. Yes. I'm not doing this damn quest right now. In the meantime, slaughter is always the answer. Where the look. Let's have a look at this. Right. Blah, 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 blah. No, I just wanted to rip a page out that says, whatchamacallit. Alright, nope. Whoops, I didn't even mean to kill that guy. Emissary of Bandars. No, that was something newer. Can you chill the fuck out? What is it? Where is it? I could have sworn it was just in a crate. Alright, I'm gonna go back down there and have a proper look. Have a mum look, as they say. Nothing hoverable. Infantry, oh god, not you two. One third of the map was stolen by a goblin. From the goblin building. Open. You have no reason to do that. Alright, fair enough. For the guy that's in there. I could have sworn it was in this crate. Okay. I heard that I avoided talking to these guys because I did not want to start goblin diplomacy. I could not be asked. I've heard that one of your number has gotten a hold of a map. That'd be Wormbrain. VOD. Deals too much. He got caught, now he's in. Oh, of course. I remember that. And you either need to use telekinetic grab or pay, I think. One of the two. I think you pay like 1,000 coins or you could just kill him and telekinetic grab it. Naturally, as I'm a thief and a pickpocket, I am going to be murdering him and stealing it. He's not getting my gold. This one, right? Yep. Here. Goodbye. Take map. Study map. Okay. Use. Sure. Alright, now I think we go to the pub. I think that's where we find the captain. Or he's like over at one of these docks or something. No, that's Monks of Intrana, right? Yeah, it's Intrana. So I guess he's in the pub. Is it Redbeard? No, it's not Redbeard Frank. Who is it? Danky Morgan. I think it's... Oh, wait, Jack Seagull back there. He looks like this. Can you help me get to Crandor Island? Crandor Island, you say? Keep yourself away from that accursed place you value your skin. So that's a no then. Aye, that be. Ben. Oh. Oh. Oh, whoops. Can you help me get to Crandor? You'll be wanting to go to Crandor Island now, but if you get there, you'll be wanting to get off quickly enough. So that's a no then. Aye, laddie, it is. Who will take me there? Ned. Okay. Well, now just except for old. Okay. Cool. That sounds about right. That might also be why I know where Ned's house is. No, I need the front door. Where's the door? Let me click the door. Alright, talk about something else. You're a sailor. Could you take me to Crandor? Well, I was a sailor. I've not been able to get... Holy shit, I'm having a stroke. I've not been able to get work at sea these days, though. They say I'm too old. Where was it you said you wanted to go? To the island of Crandor. Crandor? But it would be a chance to sail a ship once more. I'd sail anywhere if it was a chance to sail again. Then again, no captain in his right mind would sail to that island. You only live once, I'll do it. Cool. So where's your ship? Actually, I don't have a ship. Let me know when you do. The place to look. Okay, so I need a ship as well. Cool. Lovely. Dump these. Maze key. Let's also just get some food. One more. I don't remember how to get the ship. I mean, I'm guessing it's this ship. You two were annoyingly helpful before. Yeah, we get to Crandor. Alright, no. Thank you, Morgan. What's so good about over here? Hey, who said over here? Who said over here? Did I just skip the dialogue again without paying attention? Bard Roberts. It was Bard Roberts. Who are you? Nice to meet you. Okay. Oh, so you're fucking useless. Thanks, buddy. Home of the Dragon. Yes, I'm aware. Thanks, but I'll be fine. Alright. We don't fraternize with dwarfs. R. 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 Okay, I'm in search of treasure. No, I'm not doing rum deal. Everything for trade. Warpath right now. Okay, how do I get the ship? I've forgotten how to get the ship. Bartenders. Bartenders know everything. Hello there. I'm going back to Ned. I probably should have checked to see if he could tell me where to get one. He said Port Sarim, but surely he has more information than Port Sarim. Talk about something else. Will you take me to Crandor now? I don't actually have a ship. Place to look would be Port Sarim. No shit. Alright. I'm gonna talk to everyone except the dwarf, and then if no one has it, we'll talk to the dwarf. Captain Tobias. Oh wait, is it the one at the end? No. I'd rather go to Crandor Isle. No, I need to stay alive. Yeah. Clarence. Yes, I am. So you're interested in buying a ship? Now I'll be straight with you. She's not quite seaworthy right now. Oh my god. They give her a bit of work and she'll be the nippiest this side of Port Zar. You know, when she'll be seaworthy? No, not really. Ports and shipbuilders aren't very efficient, so it could be a while. Why is she damaged? There was no particular accident, just years of wear and tear. The Lady Lumbridge is an old Crandorian fishing ship. The last of her kind, as far as I know. The kind of ship that was always mightily maneuverable, but not tough. She happened to be somewhere else when Crandor was destroyed, and she's had several owners since then. Not all of them have looked after her too well. Once she's patched up, she's good and new. Okay, let's buy her. Needed to do and it won't be too expensive. How does 2,000... Fuck, that sounds like a bargain for that size ship. I'll even throw in my cabin boy Jenkins for free. That's creepy. It's all yours. Okay. So what needs fixing on the ship? The big gaping hole in the deck is the problem. We'll need a few wooden planks hammered in with steel nails to fix it. Can I buy steel nails in this? Okay. Well, we're going to go over to the construction shop. And if not, I'm going to get Ben to make me some steel nails. Now, you have to be able to buy them, right? Because it's not a prerequisite for... Yeah, it's not a level requirement. Hello, Mr. No, not Stonemason. I want the other one. Oh, wait, no, no. Bronze nails. Fuck. Ben, nail me. Steel nails. I mean, I should probably clarify that. Yeah, I'm not sure where I'd buy them. We got rid of this. For whatever weird reason. I feel like I'm kind of cheating doing this, but it is a group I name. God, do you have nails? Oops, probably should go in. I didn't even check if I already have nails or not. Nail, no. Steel nails, steel nails, steel nails. What's the axe shop just there sells them? But like, I don't know, because they just have an anvil and stuff. Let's just have a look anyway. Maybe I'll search for the nails myself, and if I can't figure it out by the end of the stream, I'll use the ones from Ben. Okay, no. You sell stuff? No. I'll check. $90. Okay. Steel nails. Okay, okay. Steel nails, steel nails. Okay, these fuckers have everything except nails. Cool. You'd think it'd be somewhere nearby, because that's just good quest design. It also is a free-to-play quest, so it has to be within the free-to-play region. Nails, nails, nails. Unless it's just something they've overlooked. I also actually don't know what's free to play anymore, because like this used to be a tutorial place for a while. Hey, puppy. What you doing, puppy? Ew. Pretty cool. Alright. Looking at a few of these shops. Huh. Listen to sleeping. What? Alright, in group. No. Alfred, you useless bastard. Give me some real nails. The thing is, I don't think unless it's because it's like because it's more Iron Man-y, it doesn't have the requirement. Where would sell steel nail? Now, let's just assume this is free to play. Yeah, that is the construction shooter. Maybe somewhere in here we'll have some. Nails, 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 nails. Grand Exchange, General Store, Lamp Trader, Silk Trader. Like, if I take them from group, I'm just not gonna... I feel like I'm doing the series a disservice. What level do I need to make them? I haven't tried out smithing yet, so to be fair, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Alright, other? Definitely not other. Secondary equipment, maybe? No. Everything, I guess. Silver smelting. Oh, wait a minute. I think Ben told me at one point that when you hit a certain thing, you unlock everything for it. Like, if you unlock iron, you get everything from iron. Create mithril items at maximum heat. Adamant smelting and smithing. Yeah. So I think you just, like, unlock everything at once. So where's steel? Silver is 20. Oh, if steel is 10, then we're fucking doing that. Iron is 10. Okay. Steel, 20. Okay. You know what? We might actually do it. That's not that bad. And I haven't tried anything yet. And I have superheat item. We're doing that. Alright, so what we're gonna do... Because I've still got the shield, so it doesn't really matter. We are going to go to the Dwarven Mine, because that's where I can buy more pickaxes as I level up. And I'm just going to superheat item things. And I think there's an anvil in there too. This could work out well. And I can alch stuff if I really want to. Yeah, so I'm going to go with a fire staff. So we're dumping everything except for the... I can go there for now. Alright, dump all of that. Dump those. Get a fire staff. Cool. And then... What was the other thing I said? I need a hammer, a pickaxe. No, that's it, right? Oh, let's have a look at these spirits. Do I have some lower level ones? Wood spirit, oak spirit, gold, coal, iron, cool. Alright, let's grab the iron spirit. Copper. I guess coal. Oh, that's everything. So now we go to Varrock. One of them. 3 of them. One of them. No, not Varrock, sorry, Felidor. What am I talking about? I'm just going to drop these. Now, the section I want to go to is probably closer if I go this way. The only downside is it's not going to teach me much about the smithing. Melt the targeted ore into a metal bar without using a furnace or reheat your unfinished smithing item. If used with the artisans, this works well with smelting gauntlets. No fucking clue. Enter the workshop. No, don't attack anyone, please. I know I could do like Blue Knight's Sword or whatever, or the Knight's Sword or whatever it's called, but I won't learn anything that way either. Alrighty, let's find some copper. There's some copper. We're off to a good start. Now, how does this work? Oh, go for that one. Oh, and shiny. Boom! Critical swing. I don't know what that means. That's 10. I guess it just means more progress if I get a critical swing. Yeah, we're gonna get mostly... Oh, wow, that used up the things already. We're gonna get mostly... Oh, I think I might have only had 8. I think I'm gonna get full inventory of this pretty much, except a little bit of tin. Get it! What the fuck is that? I don't give a shit about... I don't want those. Okay. I'm not doing summoning. Find a strange rock. Cool. Boom. Easy. And I can see an anvil just up there. Oh my god, are these always just spirit shards? Because if so, I'm just going to drop them. Smithing rock. Is this even worth doing? Bonk. I think I do prefer this like progression system thing over the old way. Like where you slowly build up progress until you mine it. And the fact that these don't seem to deplete, that could just be that I'm not like going that deep with it. Oops. Oh, I did. Okay, cool. I'll grab 3 of these. Cool. And come over here. Backpack full, that's fine. Alright, now we come over and smith. No idea how this works. Deposit all? Okay. I mean, I guess I could just make nails now with these, because I'm going to use them eventually anyway. What's this? Begin project? Miss. The heat. Your item is run out of heat. It's very. What do you mean my item is run out of heat? Bruh. The bars are clearly not fucking out of heat. Which bar is running out of heat? Oh, well, these don't have any heat. That's why. I don't know how I feel about this. I kind of like it. Obviously, I'm doing it a little cheesy by doing superheat item. We'll do it automatically. Okay, cool. It does it automatically. Keeps going. Can I do these in advance? And it just keeps going? Oh, yeah, I think that's working. Alright, that's much better. Easy. Well, they don't seem to lose heat over time or anything, at least. I'm gonna actually test something. Is this faster? If it has more heat. That was 5. Okay, it looks like it might be a little faster. If it has more heat, I mean. Wow, well, that was some slow as fuck XP. I guess we go back to mining. And so these heat forges are, yeah, they're different from the furnaces, by the looks of it. Another strange rock mining. Do they find them? No. That is all good. Melt bronze 50% faster. Heat bronze 33% faster. Heat cap raised. Yes, hustlers, okay. I don't think any of that is relevant to me. Higher chance of finding geodes, improve copper and tin, okay. Over here. I like that this doesn't seem to interrupt the task that I'm on. That makes it a lot more, like, actually useful utility-wise. And if anyone's wondering why I've got so many nature runes, it has been because I've been pickpocketing the mages so much. I can just AFK those. Like, play with the dog when it wants attention or whatever, I can just go AFK the mages. Yeah, this also means that I probably only need 2 slots available, just in case I get a double or... And at the end, I can get it down to 1 slot. As in, like, to fit the opposite ore in. Can I use an iron pick now? Iron or iron pickaxe, cool. So we'll go do that after we do this, I guess. Heat everything, or do I... Yeah, I deposit all of these, right? Deposit all. And then we... Yes, bronze nails. Does anything else, like, give more XP or anything, or is it just that? So that's... Okay, so it is still the same, where it's just based on how many bars is being used. Cool. Alright, so I might as well just keep doing this. What is that? Bronze... Oh, bar. Hello. I'm not going to do that just because I'm doing the other stuff anyway. Hit items, hit items, hit items. I think I did. Okay. I might as well do a second pass once I've gotten to the end, because that way it might speed it up a little bit. And I want the mage XP anyway, and I have so many nature runes it doesn't matter. I feel like it's got a different sound when it's like that. Alright, so 3 of these gets it to 100% too. Cool. And after this we go to the pickaxe shop, get the iron pick, then we get back to mining again. Easy. And hopefully iron will be a lot quicker because iron is, I don't actually, why did I do this? I didn't need the coal stones. Is there a deposit box down here? I don't think there would be. Okay, that's everything. Tempted to bank just to get rid of those real quick. Why is there a ladder? Where's that ladder go? You. Alright, give me an iron pick. Let me... Tool belt. Where's this go? I think I want to go up anyway, just to clear my inventory. Oh. Okay. Never mind. I am still gonna go back. Is there a deposit box near? No. Okay. Unless there's one just up here. No. Alright, so just run down to here and run back up. That's fine. Oh, you. I feel like it's very... This game in general just feels there's a lot of inconsistencies. Like, even when you can have menus open and things happen in the background versus when you have menu and things stop working in the background. Alright. We're also gonna... Alright, so we're gonna keep... No, we keep the iron spirits. Let me get rid of everything else. Alright, so we shouldn't get them anymore. Whoops. Let's just... I mean, I'll carry them anyway just because they're gonna stack up. Open all. What kind of... Bruh. Okay, so you can get other stuff. Okay, that's good to know. Alright, well, while I'm here, I'm going to dump that. And we'll just stack them until we leave. Yeah, hopefully when I hit iron, things will be faster because iron has a 50% fail rate. Or at least it used to. I don't even know if that's true in this. But with superheat item, it doesn't fail. Like, you can't fail to smith it. Wait, do I just get one every time now? Oh, not quite. I'm gonna get all the way to here, because that way we've got 2 spaces left for if I get a double copper. And otherwise I can just superheat item every single time I get a ore. That's seem meaningless. It didn't give me a second one. We almost time to swap. Cool. Now every time I get one, I just do this, and then occasionally if I get a second one, I won't be out of space. I'm not going to bother with that thing. I don't think it's worth it. Actually, does it give an extra XP thing? Okay, so it does give extra XP. Maybe it is worth it. Then again, mining XP is not what I'm having trouble with here. The smithing seems slow. At least by comparison. Then again, I don't have to actually swap back to the other rock, so clicking on it's not a big deal either, I guess. There we go. That's why I wanted the 2 inventory slots. Oh. Ah, it's going too fast. Deposit all. This might get us to iron, so I guess we will just. This should get us to iron, actually. Alright. Oh, they just started at max. Oh. Okay. Bro, this better get me there. Don't do me like this. Don't do me like this. Oh no, it's gonna do me like this. God damn it. God. Oh. 10 XP. You piece of shit. Alright, hopefully smithing will just get it there. Surely that'll be enough. I didn't even check how much XP this gives. Oh, it doesn't tell me the individual XP. Just mashes it all together. But I am liking that I'm getting mage XP. I do like that a lot. Okay, surely that is enough. The end runs now. There we go. It's iron time. And I got bronze nails for construction, then I'll have iron nails for construction, and we are winning. I can use up these iron spirits, so that should make it faster. And I hit 97 wood cutting on the old school gim. Let's go. Alright, iron rocks have moved. They were here. You son of a... Oh, why? Why? Coal. Anything along here? No, yeah. Alright, calm down. Oh, there's that thing that I can climb down. Oh, I have an idea, maybe? Whoa, what is down here? Whoa, more chests. What's in here? 101. Oh, I'm not that far off of that. What the? Be gentle. Please. Actually, I think I've been... Yeah, I think I said it before. I've been down to this in the past. I remember this, sort of. Barely. I don't remember how it works, but this ain't it for me, Chief. Seriously, where did they move the iron to? And is it worth me being in this section for it? Like in the Dwarven Mine for it? Okay, iron will be down here still, right? Iron, yeah. Okay, so that's also moved position, I think. Concentrated. Oh, okay. Where are my copper, tin, iron? But then I gotta go all the way up here to the anvil. Hang on, let me. Events, navigation, activities? Is it? No, it's not activities. Alright. Turn off all of these except for mining site. The other option is that Jack got, like, he made a bunch of portents last night. So there's that as well. I don't need a furnace. So that's the advantage that I have. I need a smith. An anvil, sorry. Are the anvils always with a thing? Fired up beacon, furnace. Okay, we need to look in the mine to see what it's actually labeled as on here. Is it just a furnace? No, it's not a furnace. What is it? We turn everything on. No. Do they just automatically have one there? Mining site. Okay, let me hover that. Okay, let's just check Varrock anyway. See if that's how it is. Because now I'm curious. Wrong thing. Varrock. Do all anvils just have the thing next to it? The heating thing. That's a bit of an invention thing, probably. Oh, it does. It just has the heat forge right next to it. Okay. Alright. So we do just need anvil and... Alright, what's that? Coal, clay. We just need to find somewhere that has a mine, like with iron, that's near a anvil. I mean, ooh, Caldigrim might be an option. We'll have a look at that in a sec. Looks like the primary thing is finding an anvil. Right. Otherwise, what I might do is I might use the portents to transfer iron. Rune rock. I don't know, it seems a little lame. Damn, that would have been so good. Red sandstone. Interesting. Again, Jagex, fix this shit. I can hover over this, but if the text is over it, you can't hover over it. That's ridiculous. Notorious. Alright, looks like I'm going to be doing 2 different things then. Alright, let me have a look at the portents. I want to test these out anyway. Alright, portent. Did this allow for... Was it mining? Surely. Yeah, mining. Iron ore, yeah. Cool. And these ones did what? How many? 20 items. And there's a bunch in the bank. Is it worth it? Or should I just do the whole thing at once in the Dwarven mine? Let's go add these rocks though. First and foremost. That. Remove. Fill. Keep going. Do I empty it first? Wait. I want to fill it first. I can't remember if you can just do it straight from the backpack or not. Add to statue. Okay, cool, I can. I got 11 wood cutting out of that, and 11 smithing. Okay, cool, we got some stuff. Cool. Alright, we are going to do the portents because I CBA superheating the entire time when I have the stone spirits. So, grab those. Let's go with, where's my group storage? Go with these. Surely that's more than enough. Save. We wear that. Like that in there. Cool. Now we can just go to any iron mine, right? Which there is some in here. Yes. Was there any in here? No. Okay, so let's go to Barracks Southwest. At least until we get to 15 or whatever. Oh, not 15, 20, so we can go get a steel pickaxe. Oh, there's also a bank right there. I could have just... I didn't even need the portents. That's fine, though. Tin iron. Here we go. Now, these might be worth clicking this because it'll speed it up quite a bit. Now I just chill. Check charges. 18. Does it replace it automatically or do you have to do it yourself? Is the next question. Also, this is going to be pretty boring to watch. Well, that's part of what this series is. I'm trying to think how much I'll need. Maybe 200? I actually tried going into the blast furnace just to buy some ores last night for something else. And, because I wanted to buy them for summoning for the iron ore. For the granite crab. Actually, that's a good point. If I get too much from here right now, then I'll just have leftovers for the granite crabs for summoning XP. So that's fine. I guess while this has happened, actually, I'll wait till this one's done, and I'll see what happens with the equipping the next one. Then I'm going to grab a drink. Critical swing. Critical swing. Come on, get one more. Alright. Oh, wait, no. What am I talking about? 6 more. These ports are wild. It was fun because like Jack got his divination up, and then I gave him a divination potion to boost higher. The fuck is that? Last one. Let's see what happens with these. Do I have to equip the next one? Surely, otherwise that'd be way too AFK. Has depleted. Okay, yes, so you do have to do it manually. Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Otherwise that'd be way too OP. Fine, I'm grabbing a drink. I was just thinking about it as I was going to the fridge. This would be an interesting question for old school players. So, portents, absolutely fucking not. That shit is way too strong for old school. But the AFK kind of mining thing with the progression, I wonder how that would go. I personally would say no. Like if this was a poll. Because I think it messes with like tick manipulation methods. But I know I'm also in the minority when it comes to people who actually care about tick manipulation methods. So, you know, that doesn't really apply all that much. But I wonder what the general player base would think. Would this be too, like, not old school? Would it even matter, actually? Because, like, it's really... Like, iron, you just one tap. Fair enough, and then it depletes. These ones, like, myth and higher, you start to wait a little bit. So you're kind of waiting anyway. I don't know. I guess it's like another way of looking at, like, the health, right? The health in this is, you don't get really hit with zeros. You don't hit zeros. But it also feels like you're not making much progress, like you're not doing more damage really that much, because you're not noticing like the extra max hit. So it's like you gain little bits of progress, like incremental progress, I guess, but it diminishes the larger progress, which is getting the item, I guess. I don't know how to word it. It's weird. It's not like... It's not something I have a strong stance on when it comes to mining. I don't like the health in this. I don't like the leveling up of it. I get it though. Oh cool, we got this here. I didn't see that before. But that's just a personal preference thing, and that's just complete bias. Which I fully acknowledge that. As depleted. Maybe what we'll do is we'll get to 20. We'll smith all of those. And then... I burn it. 27 XP. That's interesting. That means you... I thought that's like kind of like herbicide, isn't it? Isn't the herbicide item meant to be that thing where... Because like I think that came out back when I played too, where if a herb drops, you get XP instead of getting the item or some shit. I guess this is a different one. That's interesting. I don't know what to make of it. I'd have to probably say it for myself. But yeah, we're gonna get 20 mining, because that's when I can get the next pickaxe. But before I go and get the next pickaxe, we'll do a bunch of smithing and see what XP it gets me to. We'll just go up here to do that. It's near a bank and whatchamacallit. I will still superheat it. All of this just to do Dragon's Bane. You discovered a series? No, I done your... The horror. I failed. How much XP do we get? You don't have... What do you mean I don't have the ingredients? Huh? What does that mean? Don't tell me I need coal or some shit with it. Oh, please don't tell me I need coal or something with it. Iron. Melt together. Oh, are you kidding me? Did they get rid of the 50% chance to just make it? You just need twice as much. So I'm not going to be really circumventing anything with superheat. Oh, you dicks. Alright, pause those for a minute. Was it that? Where the fuck is my ore? Where is it? Did I have a tab for it or something? No. Am I blind? I could search for it, but now I'm like ready to throw hands. And I wanna know where it is. What? Where does it go? Oh no. Oh no, where does it go for the portents? Oh. 20 received items to the bank before depleting. But they're not in the bank. Why aren't they in the bank? Huh? Did it go in like here or something? No. No core metals. No. What? Ore. What? More storage. Oh, there we go. Thank God. That is... I don't like this at all. How do I withdraw it? Wait, yeah, metal bank. Oh, do not tell me it is going to force me to do it at the thing. At the fucking furnace. You have got to be trolling if that is the case. Might throw a fit. I think it's time to crash out. I should have gone to Lumbridge. Lumbridge would be closer. The bank chest. Oh, I'm not gonna like looking at this, am I? Oh, I'm about to hate this. Oh, you son of a bitch. You absolute bastards. I wanted to super. Can I even withdraw it? I can withdraw it. That defeats the entire fucking purpose. Deposit. Okay, so yeah, deposits. Whatever. I had to go to the furnace anyway, apparently. It is what it is. I mean, I can see how this is beneficial. It's just fucking with me, though. This also feels slower. Alright, just go like that and then keep going. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I don't know if I fuck with it, but I get it. Interesting. It is a little confusing with the portents because it deposits it straight into this thing. But at the same time, I don't think that's necessarily a fair criticism either because portents are probably considered a little more advanced or intermediate than what a beginner would be experiencing with mining and smithing and stuff. Although this 2 XP per bar thing is kind of lame. What the hell? Oh wait, this is going to also mess with my plan of using the excess ore for, whatchamacallit, the granite crabs. Because I'm going to be smelting it before I even know how much I actually need. Alright. I suppose that means you don't really have to worry about where you're doing a lot of this stuff. So I guess I could just go straight down there, buy the pickaxe, and then use the heating thing down there. Then I need to leave and go get portents again, though. I can't tell if this makes it more linear or, like, in terms of your options or not. I guess it doesn't really matter what order I do this in, so I might as well just heat them now while I'm right here. Wait, no, I need to go Smith. Iron nails. All of it. I still get XP for this, though. That's alright. What have these got to? 395. That one. Second time. Oh, I've got this here. What I can do is move that to there, and then I can just go across, right? 140, 140, 140. That. Then I don't have to move the mouse out the way. Item has run out of heat. Oh, I guess it's running out of heat on the last hit. That's fine, because we're going to do a second pass. I suppose this is cool in the fact that I'm getting twice, like I'm being able to cast this twice. 3 times technically if I do it full. I can do it, alright, let's just say more than once for the superheat item. So at the cost of nature runes, I can get extra, like even more XP. Like instead of 55 or whatever, I'd get 110 per bar. And again, it's very important that it doesn't interrupt it. Alright, this one's behind. That's done that too fast. And the nature runes really mean nothing to me how easily I can get them. Four XP, so it's twice as much as before. 4.5 by the looks of it. Wait, what was it for completing the item? Did I miss that? 4, 5, 4. What? Okay, so you only get the XP for the hits in it, so they got 40 XP per bar in them. Okay. Okay. 40 XP per bar. What do I need for 20? 4,500. Alright, so I need 2,000 more XP. What did I say? 40 XP per bar towards 20 XP per ore. What? So I need like 200, so another 150-ish. Or another 100. 150-ish, we'll say. Alright. Ores, that is not a bar. No, it would be close to 100. It is, again, interesting that it's like you're getting the incremental, like a lot of things seem more incremental and progressive than, you know, one big payout at the end. So, like completing something. I wonder if that's part of their core philosophy or not. Because that would be a cool way to differentiate the games. Focusing one more on risk reward or like delayed gratification, and the other one focused more on incremental upgrades, I guess. Obviously, you still have overlap between the two, but focus one towards the audience a little more for that, and vice versa for the other. What's going to happen now? Is it going to withdraw more, or do I have to withdraw more? Finish smithing. Okay, I have to do it manually. Okay. I do kind of like this as well, because it does feel like, you know, being a mage has more practical use into the skilling side of things. I think that's kind of cool. Like, particularly that it doesn't interrupt it is just such a huge thing. Like, I feel like I'm being rewarded for having progressed my mage. More so than just simply superheating the ore into the bar. Like, you know, this is kind of like now being incorporated into my workflow for smelting or like smithing. Them all. All this for some steel nails. I wonder if there's a way for me to help Jack with the divination, like in terms of, he said like it seems like his limit is going to be whatever the energy limit is, and I don't really understand the energy. But I wonder if there's a way I can help him get more energy or something so he can make more portents? I'm not sure. But, you know, like, just because I don't think it would be good in old school. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. And I, you know, again, if you think about it as a different game, that it kind of works well in this. Like, it's kind of not a bad thing other than the confusion around it ending up in the ore bank thing. But it's a cool mechanic. Takes out some of the tedium of, like, interrupting what you're actually doing. You know, you can just, I want to, you know, it's like if you want to be mining, you can mine. You know, to interrupt it to go to the bank every single time. Which I guess also leans into their whole, like, more AFK-able mining as well. Like, and a few other skills, but like mining in this example, where you can just stand there hitting the rock. You don't have to move rocks constantly. Would be cool if, like, maybe there is already something like this, but, like, you could then have, like, living rocks, right? Where it's more like the traditional old school style where you go from one rock to another. Because when you take it, you're taking its life force or whatever, then you go to the next rock while you wait for the first one to respawn and whatnot. So it's basically just old school's mining, but it becomes more of a faster, more active minigame-esque kind of thing. Like where it has its own areas instead. Alright, in project. Oh, these are already maxed for some reason. Oh, I probably hit a threshold of the levels. I am tempted to just go over here and mine it, because we're so close. Unfortunately, it takes up 2 inventory slots each thing, though. Well, I'm not sure. Oh, wait, no, that's fine, because it takes up 2 inventories for the ore, but then I turn it into the bar immediately. Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll go do that. I can still get, like, a near full inventory of bars. $4,500, 25 per bar. So we need like what, 75 or something. I don't know. Let's see as we go. If we're doing it this way, it's not as big of a deal to calculate it in advance. We'll also say this does feel more immersive, like it feels like you're actually doing it, more so than old school. Which is nice if you want that type of thing. Like, I like that type of thing. Alright, give me the steel pickaxe. No, not wield. Add to tool belt. Cool, now I can just drop the old one. I could have elked it. I should have elked it. It'd be worth fuck all, but I don't need the runes. Like, these runes are basically just currency to me at this point. At all. Oh, I still have a porter to... God damn it. Oopsie. Let me do that. Oh, screw it, actually. Let's actually wear it because we can use that for the summoning stuff anyway. Oh, it's looking like I'm not going to be able to kill Elvark today, maybe. Unless I go just a little bit longer. Bonk. We're almost there, actually. Because I just got to go to Crandor and kill him. Right, like I grab some planks, we take the steel nails, we repair the ship, we sail there, we crash, then I just go into the dungeon and kill Elvark, I think. And then return. We might be able to do that in half an hour, maybe? Maybe slightly over? That's fine. All the way over there. 60 XP is alright though. Alright, cool. We've depleted our thing. Like, I really love that this doesn't interrupt what you're doing. Curious, does this? Okay, High Elk doesn't either. That's fucking sick. That's really cool, actually. Probably one inventory of this will work, because that'll be like the equivalent of 50 or 49 ores. Sorry, 48 ores. Well, it's 40 XP per bar plus the smelting XP. So 25 times 4, so it's 200 XP. I don't think it's enough, actually. It's not. I think it was 4,500, so I need a little bit more. Unless the smelting XP that I'm getting from this is doing enough to boost it up there. Well, that's okay. I kind of want to know what's in those chests at 101 thieving now. Oh, I got a full level to go. Maybe I'll get half a level tonight or something. Oh, I'm actually, yeah, because I'm not going to be streaming tomorrow. I've got 2 appointments that I've got to go to. Maybe I do something for that tomorrow. Oh, no. So tonight I'll be possibly doing possibly doing KBD for Ben's task. Maybe we do my giant mole as well. Maybe I record both of those. Worst case scenario, I just have to do a recap video for tomorrow. Oh, I can check with this. 73 remaining. How much XP am I getting from smelting? Whoops. Jesus Christ, 2 XP. I wish I didn't check, that's depressing. Critical swing! Oh, I didn't even see that over there. Oops. Come on, let's get this one and we'll go over there. Today. Alright, 2 more bars. And yeah, I don't think this is going to be enough. We have to do another inventory. But that's okay. So there's the shortcut tunnel still. Where is it? There. What level do you need? And judging by half of the animations in this game for agility, I don't even know if it is a shortcut. Yeah, like that just seems like it takes as long. Oh god. Oh yeah, they're already heated. Whoops. I mean, I could just reheat this for XP. That seems a little ridiculous. Alright, 19. Need 480 XP. Oh god, am I going to need a little bit more than another inventory? There's a 40 each. Oh wait, no, I can't math. I'm an idiot. This is enough. I'm an idiot. 10 of these is 400. I don't know what I was thinking before. Then all we need is some steel. These are 15 each, right? 25. Oh, there's 75 each. Wait. Yeah, it's 75 each. Okay, that's easy. Then they need a couple of steel bars. I'll get some extras just in case it can fail or whatever. I guess I'll get like 10 coal, 5 iron, and just do that. Provided it is that. I'll never know in this game. For all we know, I need a bowl of onions to make fucking steel. Steel bars. Melt together iron and coal. Do I only need one iron? Hey, do I just need one iron and one coal? Sorry, I meant coal, not iron. Obviously, you just need one. Oh, I'm just going to test that out straight. I'm going to get 5 coal, go over the iron, test it out. Then if I need more, I'll go back to the coal. So it's on the way back this way anyway. Any day now. Last one. Awesome. Alright, coal was over here. So we'll get 5 of this. Go to the iron, get 5 of that. Superheat item. See what it gives. Oh, hello. That was quick. Bonk. That looks faded. Why is this so slow all of a sudden? Alright, let's go down here. Find some iron. Alright, I'm gonna superheat coal on the coal. Yeah, superheat item on the coal when I get the iron. Just to make sure it doesn't do the iron bar. Okay, so it is just 1-to-1. Okay, interesting. Alright, the next test is if I do it on the iron, will it give me an iron bar or a steel bar? Steel bar, okay. So it just gives the highest that it can based on what's in your inventory, I guess. Alright. Pause it all. Yeah, I actually think this is just as fast as the crevice. Like, this thing is... A lot of the agility animations in this are just so slow. Alright, we go steel bar, steel nails. Begin project. Heat that up twice. Heat it up again. So they get 75 experience. Interesting. I want to know when it becomes colder. Okay, so every third, so 66% and 33%. Awesome! We did it! We're gonna go to any bank. Grab some planks. Go to Port Sarim, repair the ship, talk to Ned. Oh, and grab combat gear. Grab combat gear. Including the anti-dragonfire shield. Alright, I want that, and I want that. Where wield that. We can dump all those, we can dump that. I'm gonna put that away, we're gonna get my third set out. It just has all my runes and everything. Grab the nails. And what was the other thing I needed? The nails and the... I need the map. Where did I put the map? Oh, that's the thing I was thinking of. I need that. Map. And planks. Which I had up here. I do need to clean this out eventually. But... I'm lazy. Planks. I think it said 3, but we'll bring 5 just in case. Food. I'll just drop the extra planks. And fuck it, we're gonna bring 1 bread pot. What's that in? Oh, I could have just... No, I could have just brought more planks and then I gotta go to Ned anyway in Draenor and I could have used the bank there. For the food and everything. The food and the combat stuff. I could have done that better. Alright, we go over to my pretty little ship. Where's the hull? Repair. Cool. Is there anything? Oh god, if there's another thing I have to do. So what needs fixing on the ship? I don't know, it looks fine to me. That's what I love to hear, buddy. Alright, let's go get Ned. Where's my quest? It is get Ned, right? Did you find my captain? Yeah. Captain is Ned, that's cool. I'm gonna assume we need water for a dragon. Conveniently, it's also my strongest spell anyway. Alright, we'll dump out plank and nails. Don't need that, don't need that. Grab 1 more of them. Ooh, actually, I'm bringing 1 of these to see if combo eats work. What, 2 of them? I have not tested that yet. I am curious if that works. Alright, Neddy boy. Time to go crash a ship. You had 1 job and you're going to fuck it up, so let's get to it. Alright. Will you take me to Crandor now? Where's your ship? Lady Lumbridge in Port's room. That old pile of junk last I heard she wasn't seaworthy. I fixed her up. You did? Excellent. Just show me the map and we can get go. Here you go. Yeah, and then hand Ned the map. I'll meet you at the ship then. Alrighty. I like it. I like it. Let's go. Let's go. We've almost done it. We've almost done it. I need to restart my computer. It's so laggy. All right, Ned, let's go. No, not Captain Boy. Let's talk to Ned. All right. Yes, let's go. Oh my God. Finally going. Finally on our way. Oh, this is a new animation, I think. Feels good to... it's good to feel this... Wait, to feel the salt spray on my face once again. And this is a mighty fine ship. She don't look like much, but she handles like a dream. How much longer until we reach Crandor? Not long now. According to the chart, we'd be able to see Crandor if it wasn't for those clouds on the horizon. How sus. Looks like there's a storm coming, Captain. Soon we won't be able to see anything. Oh well, the weather had been good, so good until now. Did you see that? See what? I thought I saw something up above us. It's the dragon! Goodbye. We're going to sink. Look, land ahead. We're going to crash. Ah! Everything's going bad. Ah! You were knocked unconscious and later awake on an ash-strewn bench. Oh. Runite rocks. Oh, what the fuck? There's a bunch of them. Is that normal? Alright, we go to the top still, I'm guessing. Yeah, get fucked, boys. I just blocked you. There it is. Enter hole. Careful where you say that. Where are you, buddy? Here. You ain't shit. You ain't shit, boy. I'm gonna put this bitch in his place. Alright. Get cooked. Ow. Ow. Magic strength. I don't think I need the accuracy. Alright, we're gonna do that. Yeah, like that. I don't know if he can be stunned or not. Let's choke him and see if that works. Okay, it does. So then we're gonna stun him. Ow. We're gonna... Can I combo wait? You can! Poggers! That's actually good to know. Choke him! Choke him! Let me slap him with that. Into the prayer pot. Wonder if there's an 8 delay on that. I'm gonna test it. Okay, there's not. Cool. So, food is the same as in old school in terms of ticks. Good to know. Alright, get rid of those. Yeah, get his head. Yoink. There's some strong arms to pull up the head like that. Alright. Now, I want to go through this door, because I think you got to do that for the diary. Unless it's different on this. Worth 1 coin to hire. Bullshit. Okay, yeah, cool. It is an achievement still. Alright. Now, where do we hand this in? Oh my god. Oziak. Alright, so that's a lodestone telly. Oops, I still have this active. Hello, good day to you. Have you slayed the dragon? Yes, I have. I have its head here. You actually did it? I underestimated your adventure. Your adventurer. I apologize. You're a true hero. No, I'm a champion. I'm not a hero yet. And I'd be happy to sell you some rune plate bodies. Cool. Yeah, I don't care about any. Oh, the defense XP is nice. I didn't think this gave a defense. Why did I think? Yeah, of course it does. Why did I think it gave? Whatchamacallit? That's huge, actually. Okay, it wasn't even a level. I take it back. It wasn't huge. You need 40 strength to... Bruh. I am not going to have this in my inventory the entire time. Oh my god. Why would they put a cap on that one? Okay, good. I can put it in. Cool, cool. No, I'm going to chuck that in there. It actually gave me a root plant body. Cool, cool, cool. That means I can just go goodbye. Give me money. Oh my god. We did it. We did it. We did it. Alright, let's do a farm run before we end the stream. Do that and that. Okay, so that was pretty fun. I'm glad we got the smithing instead of just leached off of the gim, at least for this series, because it kind of makes it more like what a player would actually have to do, at least an Iron Man. Obviously, you can buy nails otherwise off of the shop. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's an Iron Man consideration that you have to make them or if there is somewhere to buy them. But I'm not big on Snowflake accounts taking priority, including Iron Man, even if I am one, because it's like, we sign up for the challenge. We should do the challenge, you know? Don't be a bitch about it. Talking about all of you, all the viewers right now that are complaining about Raids 4 and the Wild Gothic sleeps requirement. Screw you guys. Deal with it. You made your account a Snowflake. Now you deal with it. I think that's pretty much it for the day. Tomorrow I'm not going to be on. I have 2 appointments. I'll either do a recap video for YouTube or just a recording of us doing KVD maybe. Maybe Giant Mole as well. Little bossing. We'll see how that goes. If I run out of time, I will just do a recap video. I think tonight, all I'm going to be doing is probably maybe magic or thieving. I do want to get to 70 defense, 70 magic for Barrows, so I can go get some arams. I did do 1 Barrows run for a meme. I just wanted to give Ben a bolt rack, because he's the guy doing the range. But outside of that, I don't think I'll be doing much. I got some stuff to do at home. More herb lore, more farming, the usual. Do I have the level for the granite crab yet? Or is that the one at 16? Oh, okay, 16 is the granite crab. Alright, so I can't do that yet either. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think I might just end the stream here. I'm only going to be doing a farm run for the next few minutes anyway. So yeah, I'll be back live on Wednesday my time, so not tomorrow, the next day. Should be the same time, but until then, have fun everyone.